Ever sabotaged yourself? You have this big goal and you find yourself doing things that are not in line with that goal? Well, the reason that's happening is because our brains are wired to keep us safe, and what is safe is known. And when we're trying to grow, we are going into the unknown of what is not safe as perceived by the brain. Now, back in the day, these could be actual dangers, right? But today, they're really just perceived dangers. You know, we're not walking out our door and a tiger's going to eat us, for the most part, right? There are exceptions, of course, but for most of us, we're facing perceived dangers. And one thing that I like to give as a picture of our brain is like a thermostat. So if you think of the growth zones, right, there are 3 growth zones. There's the comfort zone, there's the actual growth zone itself, and then there's the stress zone, the, oh, you know what, I'm going to die zone, perceived death, right? Not actual. And so I like to think of it as a thermostat. So our brain, our protective brain, our primal, reactive, keep us safe, keep things normal, keep things known brain wants to, well, it doesn't want, it just reacts, right? It reacts. When we go into a fearful situation where we have our perceived pain or whatever, perceived threat, then our brain is going to respond in fight, flight, or freeze, right? And also fawn. And we all have different ones. Typically mine is fight. So if you scare me, and I've talked about this before, if you scare me, I will probably punch you in the face because I am a fight response. If you come at me, I will come at you. So my kids know this. My son almost learned this the hard way. Thankfully, I was aware of it, and so I was able to pump the brakes, but he thought it would be funny to hide under his bunk bed when I was coming upstairs to tuck the boys in. And as I was reaching up to the top bunk, he rolled out from under the bottom bunk and grabbed my feet, and I literally had to shove myself away because I started full motion with my leg swing to kick him in the face. Thankfully I didn't, but he learned, and I told him, I said, do not scare me. Ask your father. I will punch you. There was this time when I was pregnant with our first, and I was coming out of the bathroom into a dark room. Okay. And I just shut the light off. So I can't see very well either. Right. And my husband was just standing there. He didn't try to scare me or anything. Pregnancy hormones might have played a little bit into my aftermath reaction, but when I saw him, I was scared. And you know what I did? I punched him as hard as I could in the chest. So bad, and then all the hormones so that I cried. It was just a funny experience. But anyways, word to the wise, do not scare me because you will get punched. It is funny too when Zach comes home, if I don't know he's coming home or he comes home at a weird hour, I will literally call out, is that you? Please tell me, because I'm all of a sudden in fight mode and I'm going to come at you with something, right? So anyways, so back to the thermostat. Sorry, I took a trail there. That's how my brain works. But back to the thermostat. So our brains, our primal brains, our protective brains that want to stay in the known are like a thermostat. So we have those 3 zones, as I said, comfort, growth, and stress. And let's say our comfort zone is 70 degrees, right? So the thermostat is set at 70. That is what's known. That's what's comfortable, right? Sometimes though it is uncomfortable because as our thinking starts to grow, our actions start to not align and we start to feel like 70 is a little cold and I want to turn up the heat a little bit, right? So then we start taking action to move into our growth zone, which is about 75 degrees, let's say, right? So it heats up. And what we don't want to do is crank that thermostat to 80 and all of a sudden we're like, woo, that's a lot of heat. And this is where self-sabotage comes in because we didn't move into the growth zone, which is 75. We went straight for the 80. We couldn't take the heat and our brain was like, get the heck out of the kitchen. And that's when we start to have these behaviors of, we're finding ourselves in the pantry and we're stuffing our face, or, we're having these conversations in our head of like, I'm working towards this goal. I'm working to build my business and I've set this goal. But then, our thinking starts to come in of, well, what if I get that success and then I can't maintain it? Or what if I work towards this goal and I don't actually achieve it and I put this out there and then I fail, right? What if what I'm doing doesn't actually turn out the way that I think that it will? Or what if I'm not enough? What if I can't actually do this, right? Like those are all the thoughts that we have going on in our head. And that's when our 70-degree thermostat kicks back in and says, bring it down a notch. This is not safe. This doesn't feel good. I'm uncertain. I don't know what's ahead. I don't like this. So I'm going to blast the cold and I'm going to sabotage myself because I'm afraid, right? That sabotage comes through fear of the unknown. And so it can look like all sorts of things. It can look like setting that goal and then not reaching out to people, not making connections with people. It can look like scheduling your workouts and then using any excuse in the book not to go after them. It can look like having some level of success in your business and being stuck there because you will take the route of any excuse. You'll say that's your reason why you quit or you didn't continue or what have you. But at the end of the day, it's really because you were afraid. You were afraid. You either went too hard and went to 80 or you were in 75 and, you didn't put parameters in place to account for the obstacles, the potential obstacles. Knowing what's up ahead, you didn't dig deep enough to find that fire within so that when resistance comes, you crank up the heat of that fire, right? So that the cold doesn't kick in of that thermostat and you'll move against the resistance no matter what it is, right? Because you have that deeper fiery why of what am I doing? And, when we get started in our business, or honestly, we get started working on any goal, when we're wanting to grow, when we're wanting to create this growth in our lives, we tend to start small, right? So a lot of people will start their business or start working out because I just want to feel better. I just want to look better. I just want to pay for my products, what have you, right? And so then what happens when, and so we get a little uncomfortable, right? We turn up that heat just a little bit. We get a little uncomfortable. Say we achieve those goals, right? But then what happens is so many people don't actually step back to look at the bigger picture and create a bigger vision, right? Because it's not enough to just do it because you're doing it, right? It's the thinking that goes behind it because so many people, you've heard me talk about be, do, have. Most people think that if they just do the things, then they will have the thing and then they'll be the person, right? Or if they just have the things, then they'll do the things, which doesn't make sense at all, right? Like if I have, so it'd be like, look at millionaires, right? Millionaires, not even millionaires. Look at people who win the lottery. That's what I meant to say. Look at people who win the lottery, right? They don't have the mindset around money or the habits or the beliefs to actually sustain that. And if you look at anyone who's won the lottery, I'm sure there are exceptions. Hopefully people, hire good financial advisors, but most don't do that. And most actually end up worse off financially on the other side of winning that money than they were to begin with. Why is that? Well, they did not be first, right? They were not someone who had the thoughts necessary, the beliefs, the stories about themselves, about who they were, about where they were going first. And so that did not make them become something they weren't already. It just amplifies, right? Money, success, hitting goals, growth. It just amplifies who we already are inside. And so if we don't focus on the being first of who we are now, what version of ourselves we want to be by leaning into the giftings that we have, by leaning into our strengths, by leaning into our calling that's on our life, regardless of what the world says, right? So I'm seeing So many kids graduating right now. We are far from that. Our oldest is only 12. She'll be 13 this year. So we still have a few years. I know the years are short, but the days are long, right? I get that. I feel that. But all of these kids, the only question they're being asked is, where are you going to school? What are you doing after school? Or what are you doing after graduation? Where are you going to school? What do you want to do? What do you want to be? But there's no questions about, what are you really good at? What is your gifting? What is your calling? What is your passion? What is your purpose? It's just, where are you going to college? Who the frick cares where you're going to college? I'm sorry, but this is one of those things where, if you need to know this about me, belief is very important for me. Belief is a key driver and a key strength that I have. If I believe in something, y'all, I'm like a pit bull. I will not let it go. My brain will look for more evidence to support why that is truth. And it's not a lack of humility thing either. It's not a pride thing of like, it's not even like I have to be right thing. It's more of like, if I believe in something, it is to my core and I will die on that hill. Abortion, that's a big one. I will die on that hill every single day. Living a life for God and not for the world standards of success, I will die on that hill. We are not here as parents to make our kids happy. That creates little narcissists. That creates little kids little kids in adult bodies that think the world revolves around them, and guess what? It doesn't. And when they find that out and life is hard and it doesn't go their way, they crumble and they get angry at the world and they blame and they don't take personal responsibility because it's everyone's fault but their own, right? Anyway, so I am a very belief-driven person. Everything I do is because I believe in it, and that is who I am. That is one of my strengths at my core. I just totally went on a tangent there, but sometimes I go back and listen to my podcast and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's where I was going with that. So it is what it is, guys. That's how my brain works. And, so just these kids are graduating, and that's like their key thing is like, where are you going to school? But we're not focusing on the being. Who are you? Who did God make you to be? Right? Because when you lead with who you are and you work with these amplifiers. So, if you look at money is one of the easiest ones to look at because it's tangible, right? Money, we can hold money, right? We can see the numbers in our accounts. We can, see how much comes in. We can see how much goes out. It is. It's an easy thing to see. Now, definition, and it's very, money is like money, right? Like tangible. You get it. You get what I'm saying. It's like holding a rock, right? You can't hold your mindset though. You can't hold your success, right? Like there are things that, yeah. And plus there are other definitions for those things, right? Everybody would define success differently. The world defines success much differently than I would as a believer in Christ, So, so when we look at money is a good way to think about this because it's going to amplify who we already are. So if we are generous with little, we are going to be even more generous with a lot. If we are stingy with a little, we are going to just be more stingy no matter how much we have, right? Or how little we have. And a lot of that comes down to whether you're looking at it through abundance or through scarcity, right? No matter how little you have or how much you have, if you're looking at it like I have to hold on to this, not much is coming in. I can't let much go out. That you're going to show up differently, and that's going to be amplified. Well, no, you're going to show up the same. You're going to show up the same, even if you have a lot, because you're going to still come at it from the angle of not much is coming in. I don't want much to go out. I have to control it, right? But if you're looking at it from a point of abundance, and this is how I do look at money coming in. There's always money coming in. There's so much money in this world. Like we can't even really wrap our brains around that, right? So there's always more money to be made. So I I can generously give. Like, I am going to be faithful in the little that I have. And I'm so thankful that my parents taught me that, give the first fruits to the Lord, because it's all his anyways, and he's going to do much more good with it than I can do. And he's going to multiply it in ways that I never could. Right. And so that's coming from an abundance mindset that, yeah. Anyway, I do have some money mindset issues, but I'm working on those. God is really, go back and listen to my money mindset episode, because God is really growing me in this area right now, in how I think about money and how I steward it, and how I'm teaching our kids to steward it, how I'm learning how to teach our kids to steward it, all of those things. And so, but it starts with being, and it's an amplifier, and our mindset is the same. If our thoughts, if the stories, if the things we're believing are, I'm not enough, then guess what we're going to show up like? We're going to do the things that somebody who says I'm not enough is going to do. So maybe that means we can't rest, because rest to us is laziness. Maybe it means, if we're saying I'm a negative person, we're going to look at the situation through a negative lens, right? If on the flip side, though, we're looking at life through the lens of abundance and bridge statements, like, if instead of saying I'm going to be a millionaire, how about I'm someone who's learning how to handle money and treat money well, with wisdom, with discipline, with generosity, right? Then we're going to show up differently. We're going to do different things, but it starts with that thought. And then because of that thought, those are the things we're doing. And because we're doing those things, then that's the result, the things that we actually have. And so be, do, have. If you can remember that can really help you to go back and challenge that thermostat of your comfort zone, trying to apply the cold to lower that temperature back down to what is known. And you can create that story awareness so that you can challenge those limiting beliefs, that lid that you're putting on your growth, so that you can start becoming the person who will do the things that keeps you in your growth zone. You're creating that awareness. Like, the first step to growth is awareness. Taking steps intentionally every single day to challenge your way of thinking, so then you can create that awareness around things that are not serving you, that maybe once did. You can approach it with curiosity and compassion, but you can say thank you for how you helped me in whatever area of my life, but we're going in a different direction now, or we're continuing to go down this path of growth instead of returning to that comfortable 70 degree, right? And so this encourages me because, well, first of all, I love to dream. I love to do. I don't like it when I have a dream, but my actions aren't lining up. But this encourages me because it helps me to understand what my brain is doing. So then I can say, thank you, but now I'm going to do this. It can help me to embrace the discomfort of the unknown and trust myself that I am making the best decisions through the filter of the better version that I am becoming every single day, right? It can help me to trust myself in that. It can help me to make the decisions that lead to the results and the outcomes that I want a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, right? It can help me to quickly recognize when I am sabotaging myself because I'm afraid. And then I can use the tools like unscripted journaling that I've talked about. There's a podcast episode on that, several back. You can go listen to that. I can use a tool like unscripted journaling to dig into, why am I doing this? What am I feeling right now? What am I thinking right now? And when I'm thinking that, where did that come from? Did that serve me in my life at any time? And if it did, how can I be gracious to that thought that served me. But how can I also acknowledge that that's not going to serve me right now? And so what new thought, what bridged thought, so we don't go all the way up to that 80 on the thermostat in our stress zone, what bridge thought can I lean into right now that's going to help me to think, which evokes the emotions, which the emotions drive the actions, and those actions create the results and the outcomes that we get. Not just today, but 6 months from now. I was talking to one of my business partners, and she was sharing that she was reading something about, in 6 months, you can completely change who you are. She had read an article or watched a video on it, and how in 6 months you can completely change everything, and that is true. That is 100% true. But the only way that you can do that is if you first focus who it is that you are going to be 6 months from now. What is the thinking of that person, that version of you? It's not somebody else, right? It's not a copy paste of somebody else. We've already talked about that in other episodes. It's you, fully you. Like, it's the same you, but it's a different version of you, right? It's a version that's closer or going in the direction that you want to go. Lost my train of thought. Oh boy, guys. Again, I'm going to go back and I'm going to listen to this and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's where I was going with that. And sometimes when I just keep talking, it comes back to me. So fun fact about me, my brain works, or maybe it's my mouth goes faster than my brain can work. Now I can't remember. It's one or the other, that my brain goes faster than my mouth can speak. And so then I lose thoughts, not because I have a bad memory, but just because I'm like, it's the kind of communication that my brain has. I read something about it at one time and I was like, oh, that makes sense. Like, I thought I was just forgetful, but I'm not really. It's just the way that my brain functions. And it was kind of freeing for me. My brain is always working ahead. And actually, that is one of my strengths as well, that I'm a very futuristic, strategic thinker and arranger. I'm always looking for the most efficient, effective way. And so, yeah, it's just, anyway, my brain goes 90 miles an hour and sometimes I can't keep up. Maybe that's it. My brain goes 90 miles an hour. Sometimes my mouth can't keep up. So really lean into who we're becoming and then really digging backwards by taking a bigger picture look of what does that person think? What would that person need to think in order to create the motions that are going to drive the actions and behaviors to create the desired outcome? And so it's like reverse engineering, right? But it has to start with that thought. And usually we can pick out the emotion first, or we can see the behavior. And then from the behavior, because that's more of a tangible thing, right? That we can actually walk through and experience, we can notice it, we can recognize when it's happening, and then we can dive into the tool of unscripted journaling and go backwards into, okay, when I'm doing that, what am I feeling? Is there an emotion associated with that? There always is. You can look up the emotion wheel, I think it's called. I don't know, just Google it. And it'll give you an array of all the emotions. And if you're somebody like me that struggles to express putting your feelings into words, or even being able to name the thing that you're feeling, that can be really helpful. There are so many more emotions than just happy, sad, mad, scared, whatever. And so then you can say, well, what was I thinking when I felt that? And if we can do that, then we can start to address the story and the belief that is driving everything. And that is powerful, because that means that we can effectively coach ourselves. And that is probably one of the most priceless things that we can do for ourselves in our growth mindset, in developing this growth mindset, right? In creating the results that we want. And not even creating the results that we want, but bringing that inner fire to life, into reality, not through some weird woo-woo manifestation, but through actually spending the time doing deep inner work, right? Visualizing where we're going and who we are, and really bringing all the five senses into that visualization. So then we can start to put on and practice the thinking that is going to help us move in that direction. But if we are not willing to do the deep inner work and introspection to create the awareness, right? It starts with recognizing. Just remember red, recognize, explore, and then decide and act, okay? Red, recognize the actions, work backwards, explore it with compassion and curiosity, and then decide, is that an outcome I want to continue to create? And if not, what is the new thought I need to think? And then we're going to decide, we're going to bridge that thought with, I'm learning to, it's possible that, whatever. There's so many in there. And then we're going to actually take action, right? And that's where growth happens, is when we can take that consistent action, but that only is possible in a sustainable way when we first create that awareness and we know how our brain is working to protect us from things we don't know, because growth is always on the other side of the unknown. It is. It's full on in the unknown, because if we knew it, well, like what would be working for? Like if we just knew that if we knew the future, right? 5 years from now, I am going to be this person. I am going to do these things and have these things. Then our brain has the evidence. So we wouldn't have to do the mindset work. But that's not the case. Our brains can't see past this second. We can guess, right? And that's what our brains are doing. Our brains, it's something called confirmation bias. Our brains are looking for the evidence to support the beliefs that we have. And this is why it's so important that we can recognize those beliefs, because when those beliefs are not rooted in growth, that's when we start to self-sabotage. If you found this encouraging or challenging today, share it with a friend and really spend that time doing a deep inner work. Recognize, explore, decide, and act. Take care, my friends.